It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. This is the Jill on Money show. Yeah, it's the place where you can start thinking a little less about your financial life and just transfer your anxieties to us. Who is us? Me, Jill Schlesinger, my executive producer extraordinaire, Mark Talercio, and our research assistant, Theo, who is ready to do any sort of very in-depth kind of research that's necessary. I mean, he's really advanced, Mark, considering his age, don't you think? We are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? As always, we like to remind you that you do not have to go through these treacherous and volatile times by yourself. You don't. We're here for you. And I'm not talking about the election and anxiety around that. I'm talking about your money. Obviously, it has been quite a volatile few weeks here. Good news in many respects, but that may lead you to make a decision that could be wrong for you. It's funny. I was doing a segment earlier this week with Anthony Mason on CBS This Morning, and he asked the question that everyone asks me: "Hey, what is your advice for people who have money that's invested in the market?" And I said, just like in March where I said that don't do anything when your stocks were tanking or your mutual funds were tanking, I did the exact same thing. I said, just don't do anything. Timing the market does not work. Remember, if you are wise enough to fight your emotions and sit still, you are likely to be rewarded over the long term. You are investing for decades in the future, not for the next few days, not for the next few months, not even for the next few years. Decades in the future. Your best bet is to not futz around and screw up your game plan. Okay? Good. I'm glad. All right. As always, you can send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Additionally, if you're on our website, which is called jillonmoney.com, there's a contact button, okay? And so you just click it. We'll get to you. All right. This is from Chris, who writes, I'm with Fisher Investments, and it's pretty expensive there. I don't know if they are better or not than someone else. Can you advise me? I live in Alaska. I retired due to a stroke, and hopefully I can live off my investments until I die. I'm 60 years old. All right, I need a little more information, okay, Chris? So the first thing is, I don't know how much you're paying. So follow up with me. Tell me how much you're paying for the management of your portfolio. Next, then we can compare that to what else you could do. Do you want to manage your own money? You could do it yourself. You can go and build a portfolio of index mutual funds. And if you want something in between those two, full-on investment advisory services, financial planning, which is what you're supposed to be getting at Fisher Investments, and just doing it yourself, you could engage a robo-advisor, meaning an advisor that's basically using algorithms to manage your money, but also has a little investment advice component and even some financial planning. You could seek out Betterment, Vanguard Personal Service Advisor, Schwab Intelligent Portfolio. So if you give me a little bit more information, I think that we might be able to guide you better with that. But, I'm glad that you're paying attention to the money that you are paying in those fees, because that's critical. I mean, that's the one thing you really can control in your investing life, right? The fee structure. All right, good. Next, Beverly writes that I'm 79, retired, single, and I don't have earned income. My portfolio is currently worth $250,000, and it consists of a managed portion of the account, which is down to $54,000, and I draw $3,000 a month from it for living expenses. And there's also an IRA worth $200,000. Okay, so one is just an investment account, taxable. The other is an IRA. Okay. Beverly has Social Security of 2,300 per month. I'm in good health. I feel that I will run out of money before I die. Yeek. Basically, what happens when the CMA is depleted? I have approximately $190,000 of equity in my home, no life insurance, no other sources of income. I'd love to find part time work, but under this pandemic, it's very difficult to find a job. My financial advisor paints a doom and gloom picture for me in a few years. What's your advice as far as my investments are concerned? I heard you this morning speaking of hanging in there for years to come, but my years are limited. Thank you for your time and your expert advice. Well, Beverly, I think the problem is you're drawing too much money out of the portfolio, obviously, right? That's why your advisor is getting a little freaked out because obviously, if you're taking $36,000 out of a $300,000, I'm sorry, a $250,000 account, that doesn't add up to a lot of longevity for the funds. So, what are your choices? Could you take out $2,000 a month? Could you live on $2,000 plus the 2,300 from Social Security? And then, if not, then I do believe it could be time for you to investigate what a reverse mortgage would look like. However, I don't want you to work with this Merrill Lynch. I think it's a Merrill Lynch broker. What I'd like you to do is seek the advice of a fiduciary advisor who could guide you as to whether or not tapping the equity through a reverse mortgage for you would work. And it tends to work better for people who are older. And I just want to make sure that you really consider all of your options. Um, it's very hard to go back in time and say, gosh, I wish you didn't take as much money out of your portfolio, but there it is. We are where we are. And I don't want to go back and litigate the choices that were made previously. You made your choices, right? So, what we need to do is to make sure that you are able to take as much money as you need to live on, but also preserving enough so that, God willing, if you live 10 or 15 more years, that you could survive. And I think that's the real question. So if we had that $190,000, right, and we had and you were able to even slow down to, I don't know, let's call it $2,500 a month instead of the full 3,000, and you could take $30,000 a year. And now we're talking about, we're taking $30,000 on $400,000 essentially. It's still pretty, it's still aggressive, but you are 79. And so I think a fee-based advisor is the best for you. NAPFA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, would be the place I'd look. All right. When we return, we're going to get to more of your questions. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. I am Jill Schlesinger. You may have seen me at CBS News on the air, heard me on the air. I'm a certified financial planner, and so is Mark Talercia, the best executive producer in the entire world. He's also a certified financial planner. Hey, Mark, you know what I did? Because I felt like there was a little bit of downtime in my life, I ordered all of my continuing ed that's not due until the December of 2021. I'm going to bang it out this year. I'm going to just do it. I figured that's a good lockdown thing to do. Bang out all of everything I need to do for continuing ed for this, because it's a 2-year time horizon for CFP. So There I go. Maybe I'll learn something new. You don't know. You never know. We are like the same person, separated by gender and many years in between our birthdays, but that we both like to just get things done. Like while you have a little bit of extra time, little gas in the tank, let's get it done. If you've got a little gas in the tank, if you need to get something done, now is the time to do it. And we actually would love to hear from you. And we are starting more and more to get you guys on the air with us. So send us your questions, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you'd like to come on the air, just say, hey, I want to come on the air with you, because Mark will arrange the whole thing. Okay. So I love the subject. This is anonymous. I'm finally hitting send. That's the subject. Dear Jill, first, a gazillion thank yous to you and Mark. I listen to your podcast every day. Love the theme music. Oh, by the way, we have a sister broadcast. It's a podcast. It comes out every single day. You can subscribe just wherever you find podcasts. Go to Jill on Money, search, subscribe, get it. And the theme music is just like the theme music on this show, composed by Joel Goodman. Okay, so let's see. Anonymous also says, I look forward to the weekly newsletter and appreciate your engaging website. I don't have the words to express how you've brightened some dark days these last 7 to 8 months. Oh, that's so nice. Not only with your sound financial advice, but your empathy, your humor, and daily reminders to care for ourselves and one another. So here's my story. I'm being transparent by telling you I'm embarrassed. I'm naive about investing. Just thinking about it makes my stomach hurt, my jaw clenches, and then I'm afraid of almost everything, and I feel paralyzed to do anything. So I don't. Oh, God, that's so common. Anonymous, you are in good company. Many people find themselves in this exact situation. Okay, Anonymous goes on and says, I exhaust myself by being my own worst enemy when it comes to this. I'm 61 years old. I'm healthy. I'm single. I don't have family. Oh, same employer for 41 years, laid off in March of 2019. Okay. Lucky enough, gets a pension, nets $2,700. Monthly expenses, mortgage, all the stuff, blah, blah, blah. So it looks like 1,700, 2,300, 2,500. So it looks like basically the expenses are met by the net pension amount. So that's good. Other than the mortgage, no debt. I track all my spending. Yeah, I eke by with my pension. Once my Social Security kicks in, I'm hoping to wait till 66 or ideally 70. My income will double, so I'll have more than enough. That's great. Until then, if I had a few hundred more a month for incidentals, I could breathe a little easier. Here's what Anonymous has: $115,000 in savings and checking. That's great. $1.3 million in a 401k. Haven't started withdrawals. Looks like about I'm going to make this a guess. It's about 70-30, because there's some money in an S&P 500 fund and some money in a balance fund. It's been more than a year being unemployed, and while I absolutely love it, I fill my time with hobbies and volunteer gigs, I'm having a hard time adjusting to the fact that I no longer contribute to my savings or my 401k. Basically, what I'm doing now is living pension check to pension check. I've had a couple of financial retirement planners say I'm financially okay, try not to be so afraid of spending money, but then I fall back into my fear and I wonder, is this too good to be true? Could you please provide feedback? There's 4 questions below. I've heard you suggest for retirees to have 2 years of an emergency cash fund. If I'm doing the math correctly, monthly expense of $2,500 times 24 months, I should have about 60 grand. Should this emergency fund be separate from my current bank savings account? No. And, by the way, this is not the same for you because you have income. So you're fine. So it's not separate. You've got more than enough. You probably, have more than enough money in your savings checking. Your 115 grand, perfect. If I didn't want to return to work and I wanted to add a few hundred to my monthly expenses, should it come from my checking savings or 401k? I would use your checking and savings for however long it takes. Don't go below your 60,000 and use that. Do you agree that I should have some allocation changes? Yeah, I think you should actually be more balanced. I think you got too much risk. That allocation should be closer to a 50-50, 50 stock, 50 bond. So the easiest way for you to execute that is to, instead of doing a balanced fund, is to take some of the money in the S&P 500, maybe 5 or 8% of that, move it into a bond fund. Take the entire balance of the balanced fund and move that into a bond fund, and maybe an intermediate term bond fund. If you don't have that, follow up with me and we'll see what bond funds you have. Okay. Next, mortgage balance, 220 grand, 25 years left, 30-year fixed, 3.25%. At the time of my layoff, I was tempted to draw from my 401k to pay it down, but I didn't. It feels like a huge burden, Jill. Do you see any opportunity for me to take money from my checking savings or 401k and pay down the mortgage a bit? No, no, no. Do not do that. Anonymous, don't do that. You don't need to do it. Absolutely not. So for the time being, keep that mortgage. Use your checking and savings to fund that couple $100 every single month. Reallocate your portfolio, but do not pay down that mortgage right now. Okay? So, you ready? Here's how Anonymous ends it. I'm hoping this isn't too much to address or that it's not clear enough to provide any feedback. But if so, at least know that after listening to you being so welcoming and supportive, I at least gained the courage to finally hit the send button. I've had some version of this in my draft box for months. Forever grateful, Anonymous. Anonymous, first of all, thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for having the courage to do that. It's hard to tackle these financial issues when we have put so much of our emotions that get, they kind of get woven through every decision. I guess that my number one message is thank you. My number two message is you're in good shape. You need to just hear that. You are in good shape. You have plenty of money. You are going to be able to live a long life and spend those extra couple $100 every month. You don't have to live in a mode of scarcity. That scarcity often will lead us to make very bad decisions. It's really the flip side of greed. And what I'm begging you to do is to keep a copy of this and play it for yourself when you're feeling freaked out. And you're going to hear it. You ready? Here's your mantra. You're fine. Anonymous, you're fine. Take a deep breath. Know that you've done a great job of taking care of yourself. You did that. No one did it for you. It is time for you to enjoy the fruits of all of those years of labor. You deserve it. You're entitled to it. And you don't have to make yourself crazy for allowing yourself to enjoy the money that you have saved. So hopefully, if you need more, I will literally send you a 30-second mantra that you can keep on your phone. In fact, I'm going to do that. Mark, we'll record that right after I'm done. We're going to give her a quick mantra so that she has it on her phone, and then she can just say, oh, okay, every time I freak out, I'm going to listen to this. That's what I'm going to do. All right? All right. When we get back from the break, more of your questions. It's Jill on Money. And if you have any questions at all, you can always go to the website, jillonmoney.com. Don't forget to sign up for our free weekly newsletter when you're there. And try, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe to the podcast, Jill on Money. Okay, we'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to try to help you walk through all the hurdles, or maybe scale the hurdles that stand in front of you and your financial success. Or maybe you've already screwed your financial life up and you want to fix it. Whatever it is, whether you're just starting out or you are a very seasoned investor, give us a holler. Our email address, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill@JillOnMoney.com. Hey, Mark, after I was thinking about that previous question about Anonymous, maybe we should get into the business of just recording things for people. And it's another revenue model. What do you think? We'll just give mantras to people. I love that, like giving someone a ringtone. All right, next up, David from Kentucky. He's on the line. Hi, David. What can we do for you?
Question I have, I'm trying to decide on a financial advisor. About a year ago, my dad passed away, and he left my brother and sister and I some money that he had with Raymond James, and there were two different accounts he had. And I went ahead and stayed with Raymond James. That's the first financial advisor I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not been too happy with that, and I'm wondering if I should switch to a fee-only advisor to look at my entire situation.
So why were you unhappy with the situation in staying there over the past year? What do you what did you want that you didn't get?
Well, when I met with the person there, we talked about the accounts that my dad had, and I also explained to him what I had in my 401k at work, and I have a couple of rental properties, and asked him for advice in general, and I never got that. And then the other issue is I just don't think I've been given much advice, and the fee is, it's a percentage based on the account value, and it just doesn't seem like I'm getting much for that.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about yourself, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the best type of advisor for you. So you inherited this money, but you are working still, right?
Right. I'm 51. I'm sure I'll be working for several more years, but my 401k at work is around $1 million. And then I have two rental properties. I have two kids at school, and one lives in each one of those. So
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It helps for not pay for them. There's a little rental income. So I don't know. I would like to have some advice.
Yeah.
But I'd like it to. I don't feel like I'm getting, totally unbiased advice.
Yeah, I get that. And maybe because this guy didn't do that. And maybe, when your parents were alive or your father, he didn't want advice. He just wanted someone to kind of caretake the account. And there wasn't much advice to give. So if you are interested in a fee-only advisor, and, all these words sound similar, but there's a very distinct difference. Fee-only would tend to steer you towards somebody who collects a fee to do financial planning or money management, either one or both, and that fee is either a flat fee or maybe it's an hourly fee. And the best way you can find somebody near you is to go through the NAPFA website. So that's the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. It's napfa.org. And you can find an advisor, type in your zip code or your location, and you can talk to people. But it seems to me that, I'm guessing that the tantalizing part of your story to someone who is on a percentage basis is not the money you inherited, but that $1 million in the 401k, and someone who is a commission-based or even an asset under management-based advisor would say, I'll work with this guy for a little while, bide my time, build a relationship, and then when those assets are ready to be rolled over, boom, I got $1 million client. Now, on the other hand, a fee-only advisor might also, like to take over those assets eventually. But the immediate concern is, what is it that I need to help David out with? What are the concerns he has? How are we looking at his kids' college? How are we looking at retirement? And look, it might cost you some real money. Maybe it's going to be a couple $1,000s. I don't know. But I think that you will feel more confident, especially because anyone who is a NAPFA advisor is they could charge an asset under management fee, but they cannot collect commissions.
And they are fee only, meaning that they really tend to be the types of folks who they lead with financial planning more than money management. And I think that's what it sounds like you're looking for. So that's my recommendation to you. I don't, like I said, I don't think that anyone like hoodwinked you in any way, but it sounds like it's just not the right match to be using someone at a brokerage firm who just wants to manage money and not do full-on financial planning. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because I asked him to look at the entire situation, and he just hasn't given me, that type of advice.
Yeah, I'm going to guess when he tries to give that advice, it'll be just about the time he gets the transfer paperwork out. And by the way, maybe you don't need to have anyone manage your money because you're managing your $1 million already. Maybe you just have, open up your own. Where is your retirement account held?
John Hancock's the administrator, but it's mostly American funds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, look, if I were going to just transfer that money out, the money you inherited, go to a discount brokerage or to a index fund family like a Vanguard, or go to a Charles Schwab or a TD Ameritrade. Use those funds and keep your life simple, and then go and get advice. And that advice, fee only, again, for everyone listening, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. The website is NAPFA, NAPFA.org. We'll get back to our program in just a second. During this break, here is a great idea. Go to JillOnMoney.com and check out the resource section. There's a lot of really good stuff there, so you might find something that could be helpful to you. When we return, more of your questions. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to try to help you wade through your financial issues. I can't even believe it that essentially there's about 45 days left in the year. This has been the longest year of our lives collectively, I think. It has just been so difficult on so many levels. I hope that you are all planning to take some much needed mental breaks from anything that causes you stress, whether that's politics, whether that's your money, whether that's anything in your family that's driving you crazy. I don't care. Give yourself a little bit of a break, because it is time for you to take care of yourself. That's what I can tell you. I know that this is true. Believe me. If you have a financial question, if we can help put to rest something that's on your mind, please don't hesitate to contact us. 2 ways to get to us. You ready? Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Or if you're on our website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website, there's a contact button. Just click it and tell us what's going on. That is what Pat did. And here is Pat's question. Jill, I enjoy your show and I look forward to your podcast on my morning walks. It's empowering to listen to women such as yourself coaching us all on personal finance. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for writing, Pat. Okay, here's a question. Pat says, I plan to retire in 5 years at the age of 60. My company offers a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k. For the past 30 years, I've been socking away all of my money in the 401k. Should I invest in the Roth for the next 5 years or stick to the traditional? Here are the numbers. Ready? 401k, $1 million at Fidelity. Index funds, $1 million at Vanguard. Individual stocks, $200,000. 30 grand in cash. Home is worth $1.5 million, and we owe $630,000 at 3.5% interest.
We have 3 rental properties. They're valued at $1.4 million. We owe $780,000. They generate $1,500 in monthly income. Now, that's kind of interesting. Hold on a second. I'm intrigued by that rental property for a sec. So they got 1.4 million. They owe 780,000. So they have equity of 620,000. I wonder, like, that monthly income doesn't look so great. That rental properties, they're not working so great for you, but okay. I just had to do that quick math. Sorry. Okay. Wife has $1 million in her 401k. She'll receive a $2,000 a month pension. She'll plan to retire at 60 in 5 years. We've got no debt outside of our properties. My wife and I are fortunate. We've got a combined income of 400 grand. We're in the 36% tax bracket. So, should they use a traditional or a Roth? Honestly, I guess I would just do a Roth because you have so much money socked away right now. It kind of doesn't even matter. But for the next 5 years, yeah, why not? Why not have some Roth assets? So I say, sure, let's do that because all the money that you have in those traditional funds are going to have to come out. And when those monies come out and your wife has a pension and then you're also collecting Social Security, you're going to have real taxable income. So yes, I say yes to the Roth. Second question. 10 years ago, I moved a traditional 401k into an IRA with Vanguard. Over the past 10 years, I've added $6,500 a year. Thereby mixing taxed money with non-tax money. Not smart. Should I pull the 65 and put the funds in a savings account? I don't want to pay taxes on that money again. What are my options? I would talk to Vanguard and ask them what the options are. That is a terrible thing that happens because the $6,500 per year, what were you doing with that? What was that? You thought you were making an IRA contribution or a non-taxable IRA contribution? You need to recharacterize that money. That's what you have to do. Very difficult question there, but gang, if you do not mix money, that's the real issue. It's one thing if you've rolled it over and then you've turned it into a traditional IRA, but you can't mix taxable and non-taxable money. So talk to Fidelity, explain the situation, see what they say. Okay, good. All right. Arlene writes, how many years do I have to use up my inherited IRA? I heard that if I take the minimum distribution each year, I can go longer than 5 years. Is that true? Well, this depends on a few things. Number one, did you inherit the IRA from a spouse? If you did, then you don't have to worry about the time frame. If it's a non-spouse, it depends on when that person died. If that person died before the end of 2019, you can take the money out at the same pace that the person was taking the money out, or you can stretch it out over your lifetime. That was called a stretch IRA. If the person died this year, then you have a whole different situation because that means that you have to take the money out over the course of 10 years. That was part of the Secure Act that was enacted last year. Boy, doesn't the Secure Act seem like a long time ago, Mark? Woohoo! Anyway, if you have any follow-up questions on that, let us know because there are many factors there that we would have to, understand in terms of your own financial life and as well as, when the person died, et cetera. Okay? Very good. All right. We want to encourage you to go to our website and do all the stuff that you always like to do, which is, sign up for our free weekly newsletter, maybe buy my book. And don't forget, we've got one more segment. And so before we do that, send us a question. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? What indeed is in your wallet? My goodness. It used to be that financial planning folks would say, oh, you've got to know exactly what's in your wallet because that's the way you're in touch with your money. Now that we've essentially started moving to a cashless society, I guess it's what's in your phone. That's how you, what's in your phone? Figure it out. I am still that old fart who carries around some cash. Never know. I always have a little bit of cash just because. That's because I'm old. All right. Here is Kathy, who says, my mother is 70, retired, and divorced. She's trying to find a reputable source to help her put her meager savings, $25,000, into the best bank account, regular savings, money market. She's got no debt. She lives in an apartment. Her mother lived to age 93. So, Kathy, maybe you can do this with your mom. I would go to depositaccounts.com. depositaccounts.com. It's an aggregation website. It will tell you where all of the money market, high yield savings, CD rates, all that, tell you the best yielding ones. Now, of course, it's a low interest rate environment, so it's not going to be great. But if this is all the money in the world, you must make sure that the money is safe. Safe. So depositaccounts.com, that's the website. If you can, if you're tempted to maybe take on a little risk, don't be. Just keep it simple. This is a plain vanilla checking, savings, high yield savings, whatever it is, but don't tie the money up. Safety first, okay? All right, when we return, we are going to go into a little bit of a deep dive on estate planning. Yep, special guest star, Mark's estate planning professor from his certified financial planner course in the topic. So estate planning next hour. It's going to be better than what I'm selling right now. It will be, it's very useful. Haven't you learned anything in this last 8 months? Get this stuff done. Okay? All right. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money, and we are diving into an important topic this hour. A while back, we interviewed one of Mark's favorite certified financial planner professors from NYU. His name is Russell Fishkind. He's an estate attorney, and he also teaches. And we thought that in this pandemic, as things are going on, it is more essential than ever to get the estate process started and then to complete it. I can't tell you the number of people who tell me, "Oh yeah, yes, oh yes, I've been meaning to do this, but I got stuck, or we can't do this, we can't do that." Okay, it's time to get unstuck, my friends. It is really time. You are in the midst of a global pandemic. This is the time. And if you're lucky enough to be able to go see an attorney and get this stuff done right now, or if you never finish it up, get it done. You want to know why? Russell Fishkind will tell you. Here's our interview, part 1, Russell Fishkind on the Jill on Money Show.
Russell, what is the best financial decision or career decision that you've ever made?
I'm going to go with career decision. I always wanted to go to law school. Fortunately, I did go to law school and became a lawyer, and I really enjoy my practice. Now, it wasn't so much a decision to become a trust and estate lawyer, but I got a job at U.S. Trust, and I found I really liked it. I have stuck with being a trust and estate lawyer now for 30 years, and I have to tell you, Joe, I really like it.
You mean you started practicing law when you were 13? You look so young.
Well,
right after your bar mitzvah,
Now
you're
I'm
just able
blushing.
to do that. That's wonderful. And you know what? You write passionately about this. You speak passionately. That's why you're a wonderful professor. That's what Mark said. We need to get people to pay attention to their estate planning. I think that so many folks said, oh, well, the tax law changed. Now I don't actually have to worry about it because there's no tax that I have to be freaked out about. I'm married. I don't have $22 million. Why do people need to do this?
Well, if you just look at some celebrities who've died without a will, and you look at the litigation that's erupted as a result of them dying without a will, having nothing to do with tax planning, it's that the family members are fighting over who the executor should be. Or in Prince's example, the protection of his intellectual property rights with all of his music. So I think it's important for families to consider creating an estate plan that protects each other, that protects their children, that names the correct fiduciaries in an effort to promote their legacy and not have probate litigation.
You know, it's so funny. Sometimes I've written about this and I'll say, gosh, if you don't do it, you got to go through this probate process. And people say to me that probate wasn't that bad.
Depends on the state. It depends on the county. Sometimes you have a will which wasn't signed properly, or there's no self-proofing affidavit, which makes probate a difficult process. The idea is to have an estate plan that's properly drafted, properly executed, and then, depending upon the state you're in, probate should be a fairly smooth process.
And obviously there are certain assets that just bypass probate. So anything that's by contract, insurance proceeds are not probated. Or if you own a house with somebody and it's by contract, it'll pass to the other person. Let's see what else, a retirement account. But for everything else, that's an asset that would have to be probated, right?
So the assets that you mentioned, we would call them, if we're teaching, testamentary substitutes, assets that pass by operation of law and they're not probate assets. However, oftentimes it's that designation, that beneficiary designation, that's the problem. By way of example, how many of your listeners have IRAs or 401ks?
Tons.
Okay, perhaps they name their spouse as beneficiary and maybe that's fine. But oftentimes what I'm seeing is they name as the secondary beneficiary their minor children.
Right.
Minor children cannot inherit. That was the small problem. The big problem they've now created is there's no trust created for the benefit of the child. So what you need to do is integrate the titling of the asset with the will. By way of example, if I have 3 children and I create a standard age-terminating trust that says when they're 25, they get a third.
Right.
When they're 30, they get half. When they're 35, they get the balance.
I like to call that the controlling from the grave part of the scenario.
Well, you try and distribute money as they mature.
They're probably fine. You got to wait till 35. That seems like a little excessive. But okay, continue your example.
Okay, but you would agree that the 2-year-old to the 12-year-old...
Yeah.
Okay,
Totally.
So if you agree with that part, then the secondary beneficiary designation should be changed to the trustees under my last will and testament. And that way, the IRA, the 401k, the group term life insurance can come into the will, and yes, it becomes a probate asset, but then it's governed by the trust for the benefit of the children.
What is the problem when I've heard a state attorney say that a lot of people they can't really figure out what they want to do? Maybe they're divorced and they have young kids, and sometimes they'll just write as the beneficiary the estate of. What's the problem with doing that?
Well, number one, it subjects it to claims of creditors. So that's the first thing that you want to avoid. And that's why when I gave you the example, you name, instead of the estate of, to the trustees under the last will and testament of Jill or Russell. And that way, it's not subject to claims of creditors.
What about the idea that when you die intestate, that there's like a sort of a formula and each state is different? Is that correct?
That is correct. So if someone dies without a will, like Aretha Franklin, like Prince...
We're like them anyway.
Very much so. I'll sing if you'd like, just so we can test this theory. The state governs the distribution of the assets. That's called intestacy. And by the way, the personal representative would be called the administrator, and they have to be bonded. So between being bonded and being guided by the state's dispositive provisions as opposed to the client's, oftentimes it's a problem. But the bigger problem, because you were alluding to problems, is that with respect to estate planning, what I'm finding is that the professionals sometimes are part of the problem because they're not integrating their services. Meaning, if a client comes to me to create an estate plan, I think it's important that I ask them who their life insurance professional is and integrate them, who their money manager is and integrate them, who their banker is. Bring them into the process so that the estate plan can be done holistically. This is not a one-off transaction. It should be a dynamic transaction that involves a team who holistically create a plan that reflects the testator's intent.
And why don't more attorneys do that? Because, I don't want to bring those sales guys into my world. Or why do you think? What prevents a qualified estate attorney from doing that, do you think?
Well, maybe the fear is that it's going to slow up the process. Maybe the fear is that there's going to be a sale involved, that one of the professionals might be selling some product. While those two issues might be true, I find seasoned professionals, certified financial planners, know how to effectively create an estate plan. And if there is to be a need for life insurance, they know how to address it properly.
We'll get back to our interview with Russell Fishkind in just a minute. Hey, here's something you could do. During the break, you can buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. I have an entire chapter that is dedicated to the estate planning process and why people are such numbskulls in not doing it. Okay? Lots of scary stories in there. Check it out. JillOnMoney.com is the website. You can find the book there. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to try to take the mystery out of your financial life, but also to answer some of the big questions that might be poking around your brain, like, why do I really need to do my estate planning? Or do I really need an attorney? Gosh, attorneys are so expensive. It's unbelievable to me that people who are worth a lot of money come back with that question. And if you consider that many of you spend more money on a vacation than you're willing to spend on an estate attorney, it is so important. And that is why we have a great guest. His name is Russell Fishkind. He was Mark's professor when Mark was doing the CFP. So that's kind of cool, right? Here is more of our interview with attorney Russell Fishkind.
It is important to have an estate attorney. For example, there's sometimes we get a note and someone will say, I'll have my estate attorney draft something for my brother, and it's a different state. There can be a problem not understanding what the state rules are specifically, right?
Absolutely. The estate plan should be a state-sensitive drafted document, so it reflects the rules of a given state, including how the document should be signed. But I might also add, it's not just the will that is material to an effective estate plan. It should be a will, or what's called a pour-over will, revocable trust to bypass probate, but also a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney. And what I'm finding, and as Mark knows, I ask my students routinely, how many of you have a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney? And it shocks me that sophisticated professionals don't have healthcare proxies and powers of attorney.
I think that those documents are very difficult. They're hard conversations to have, whether it's with your parents or your friends and even your loved ones, because it does force you to contemplate death or illness, and it's scary. How can you help people get over that hurdle?
So what I like to do is to explain to individuals what a healthcare proxy is, and it may not be exactly what they think it is. And that is to say, most people think of a living will or an advance directive for healthcare as the pull-the-plug document, and therefore, you correctly surmised, not that much fun to talk about. But when you actually read a healthcare proxy, it's so much more than that. You're appointing a healthcare agent. So if for any reason there's an issue where you just can't speak for yourself, you need your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your significant other, or a sibling to just talk to the doctors, figure out what they should do, get medical records, have them airlifted to the right hospital, and just get involved. Without the healthcare proxy, none of those family members or spouses have the right to do so.
Do you find that in most hospitals that if the spouse shows up that they'll be happy to talk to the person. But if it's not a spouse, it's a little bit harder to do.
So I think you're right to a point. They will talk to you as the spouse. But the minute you say, I want to see his medical records, I want to move him out of this hospital to another hospital, I don't want to see this physician, I want to see a different physician, that's when you're going to get the blinking yellow, if not the red, because you wouldn't have the authority to do these things. The other thing that might catch parents' attention is for those parents who have children in college. The child in college needs a healthcare proxy.
Oh, my God, I never thought about
the parent
that.
as an agent.
That's so interesting.
So if you look at it from that perspective and you say, well, clearly your child needs it once they attain age 18,
right.
Maybe you should have the same protection.
Let's go back a second and really discuss what are some of the elements of a basic estate plan. What should I be carrying into the office with me to make that a productive meeting?
So, Jill, I use what's called a last will and testament fact sheet. So if you called, I would email the fact sheet to you, and I'd ask you to fill it out and bring it with you to the meeting. When you come to the meeting, I walk through the fact sheet with you as almost a guide to begin a conversation. Because after all, I'm going to be asking you about the relationship you may have with your spouse or your children, or how are they doing, or what keeps you up at night. So it's very important that we have a rapport, that you feel comfortable, because this process is dynamic. So we start with the fact sheet, and then I'll ask you about your banker, your money manager, your life insurance professional, and then start asking you questions like, well, if something happened, I see you have a bracelet or a necklace or a ring, who would you like your personalties to go to? And oftentimes, it's the distribution of personalties that causes, many cases, sisters to fight over mom's engagement ring, over the candlesticks. We start with a fact sheet, and then it morphs into a conversation about personalties, about who should be the beneficiary of your estate, and how old are your beneficiaries, and should there be trusts. And another big area, and it's really a frightening statistic, is about 18% of all Americans are recognized as having a disability. And if that's so, we know that we need to start talking more about the utilization of a supplemental needs trust, a trust that would be created for the benefit of a child who may have a disability but wants to protect any inheritance from a claim of Medicaid or security disability income.
Okay, so we're coming into a meeting with an estate attorney. You are really spending half of your time being a shrink and half of your time being an attorney. So can you speak a little bit to this idea that there are so many people who are like, can't I just do this online? Talk about why a qualified estate attorney is preferable to filling out documents online.
What percentage of Americans have been divorced and remarried?
I don't know, half?
Okay, so let's go with half. When you have a second marriage and children from a prior marriage, in my experience, that's the number one fact pattern that causes probate litigation. And I could assure you the online will is not going to expose the nuances that exist between spouse number two and the children from the first marriage. So you have to have a discussion about creating a trust called, by way of example, a QTIP, a Qualified Terminable Interest Property Trust, for the benefit of spouse, and determine how much is the right amount to fund it with while preserving enough of, let's say, dad's asset base to leave to the children from the first marriage, so you have a balance. So the estate plan is balanced as between the needs of the two different classes. I don't think the online programs are designed to expose or to guide individuals as to how to create a plan that provides for different classes.
Okay, let's say that I'm 30 years old, I'm listening to the show, I'm single. I was like, okay, Russell's scared the crap out of me. I'll get my estate documents. I'm not married, I'm single. Can I do it online or should I not? I mean, maybe the alternative is not doing nothing. So maybe this isn't preferable to nothing. But can I do it if I'm single, simple? Is that reasonable?
So I'm not a fan, and it might come across as self-serving. I get it. But here's my thought. As a 30-year-old, you may want to take care of mom or dad. You may have a kitten or a puppy. You may want to give money to your siblings. You may want to give it to your alma mater. I'd rather see it done right And I think estate planning has to include a relationship with someone who's skilled, because the probability is that 30-year-old, perhaps, maybe they're going to get married, maybe they're going to have a significant other, that the estate planning need will evolve. So I think it's better to start with an estate planner, not just any attorney. And I'm sure they're...
Right, like Joe did my real estate closing 3 years ago. No.
Don't we hear that all the time?
All the time.
And
all the time.
Those are usually, and no knock on real estate lawyers, but those are usually the wills that aren't drafted properly. And it's not a will, they need an estate plan. So I think your clients would be, or your listeners would be best served by starting with a fact sheet, as you pointed out, but sitting with an estate planning attorney for a half hour or 45 minutes. And if your 30-year-old doesn't feel comfortable, move on. There's others.
Right.
Find someone where you feel connection to. And once you have that connection, keep the relationship, because their life is going to evolve. They will need prudent and proper estate planning done.
Okay, we'll get back into our deep dive on estate planning in just a second. During the break, here's what you ought to do. You should email us any financial question that's on your mind. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And if you can't get enough of us, then subscribe to our podcast. It's a sister broadcast. It's called Jill on Money. You can get it anywhere you find podcasts. And if you don't know where to find a podcast, ask somebody. They'll tell you, I promise. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this hour we are devoting to something that we believe is probably more important than anything else you should be doing right now when it comes to your money, and that is estate planning. I happened to pull up the caring.com website just to check out who has done their estate planning, who hasn't. The number of adult Americans that have a will or any other type of estate planning document has decreased by nearly a quarter since 2017. I don't understand this. And by the way, older adults, they're less likely to have a will. Older and middle-aged adults, that number has dropped by 20%. So what's going on with you guys? What's going on? So just to give you the numbers, in 2017, the number of people who said they have a will was 42%. 2020, 32%. Mark, how is this possible? It's a tragedy. It really is. I don't know what, I mean, I know that people say they don't have the money to do it. And, you know, obviously we just did a segment about how you should go to an estate attorney, but there are online will making providers. You should check it out. Most people say the reason they don't have a will is I haven't gotten around to it. That's the number one reason. And the other is I don't have enough assets to leave to anyone. Well, what about your health care? What about the actual decisions that have to be made on your behalf? What about that? Isn't that a reason to get your documents in order? These are such important decisions that you are leaving to be answered by the state in which you die. So you got to get busy. So today we are re-airing an interview that we ran with Mark's, his CFP professor, Russell Fishkind. He's an estate attorney. He teaches at NYU. Here's more of our interview with Russell Fishkind.
What other mistakes are people making when they conduct their estate planning?
Well, so I wrote this book called Probate Wars of the Rich and Famous, and it was intended to highlight the most common mistakes that people are making. So, for example, in the chapter called Lessons from the Dead, which is about Jerry Garcia, he named his third spouse as executor of his estate, which included daughters born from a prior marriage and a relationship that wasn't a marriage. You're shaking your head because you're right. It's very clear that that's going to be a problem. And it was a problem. And it created litigation for years. So number one, choice of fiduciary, who you name as your executor.
Who should that be in most cases? For just talk about the characteristics that make for a good executor or executrix.
Okay, so pattern recognition. So if it's a first marriage, long-term marriage, the spouses are on the same page, that's a pretty easy one. Usually it's the spouses. If the family structure consists of adult children who get along well, like the Waltons, everybody loves each
The
other.
Schlesingers.
But, there aren't too many families like the Schlesingers.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, perhaps you can name the adult children who get along well as the successor executors. Now let's talk about the Hatfields and the McCoys. And these are families where there's angst, where there's a second or third marriage, where they don't get along well, where perhaps it's a dysfunctional family. So my point with the Jerry Garcia chapter is you don't name an interested party. It's perhaps better to name an independent fiduciary, an independent executor. That could be a bank. It could be an accountant. It could be another family member who they just trust. Utilize the independent so as to cut off the emotional angst where one group, the children, might think spouse number 2 is trying to get the house, or in Robin Williams' case, keep the Emmy Awards or the personalties and not give it to the children. If you have an independent executor, it's going to cut those arguments out.
What about the idea that costs money, right? So people say, yeah, but then I have to pay a fee to so-and-so. It's well worth it when you think about how much it would cost for litigation. And these things do lead to litigation, or at least a lot of emotional angst, which is costly on a different level.
Well, you're clearly experienced and you've been through this because that's exactly right. When you have a fiduciary or an executor who really doesn't know what they're doing, who doesn't communicate, who isn't transparent, it leads to litigation. So perhaps the client thought they were saving money by naming wife number 3 or husband number 3 as executor. They're not saving money. They're causing litigation, and litigation's really expensive.
Yeah. When you look at the system as it exists right now, the legal structure, I think that what surprised me, when my dad died, I was a certified financial planner. I know about this stuff, right? And even I was surprised going through it myself, what a pain in the neck it was to just settle an estate. And he had a trust, and everything was titled correctly, and it still worked. So I think that one piece of advice that I try to tell people when when you're naming your kids executors or co-executors or or trustees is that you should name someone who's organized because it actually takes some work to do this. I think that an attorney can really help with the process, but even that, you have to do it. It becomes this weird full-time job for a very short period of time, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, the attorney might be able to help with certain documents like receipt and releases or documents related to transferring the title. But boy, are you right, because you've got to roll up your sleeves, clean out the garage, pack up all the personalties, ask your siblings who wants what, oftentimes moderate the dispute, then perhaps sell the house, decide which broker you're using, tell your siblings that you're listing the house for $599.9, only for them to tell you, no, the house across the street sold for $670. You should sell it for $670, and you get into these daily squabbles about whether or not what you're doing is right.
Or second guessing, which is also annoying.
Yeah, or second guessing. So it is a lot of work, and if everything goes swimmingly, usually you don't really get a thank you. But if there's bumps along the way or problems, it's kind of unbelievable how quickly siblings will look at you with a raised eyebrow and suggest that maybe you're not paying enough attention to the job at hand and maybe you should refer to someone or let me do it. So it's not an easy job.
Okay, we'll get back to our estate planning episode with Russell Fishkind in just a few minutes. Here's something to do during the break. You can go to the website. You can read some columns, but why don't you just bookmark the website? Bookmark JillOnMoney.com. And then whenever you have a question, you can go to the website, see what's going on there, and also you can contact us. There's a contact button for you right there. Okay, we'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And this hour, we have been able to spend some time with a special guest. His name is Russell Fishkind. He is an estate attorney, and he also teaches at NYU, at New York University. He was Mark's professor for the CFP class that focused on estate planning. And, I love a guy who gets psyched about doing estate planning. Really. That's the most fun. Before the previous segment, I talked a little bit about the survey from caring.com about estate planning. And, I forgot to mention one thing that really did kind of freak me out when I looked at this is that, in a weird way, the idea that people think that they don't need it because all that estate planning has to do with is assets, it's so wrong. Because obviously, the most important part of estate planning, especially amid a pandemic, is trying to tell your loved ones what kind of care that you would want in the event of an emergency. And I would also be remiss in not noting that if you have some wishes that about your own burial, about whether you want a religious ceremony or not, it's really important that you put that down on paper. Okay, so here we will finish our interview with Russell Fishkind. If this interview arouses questions, don't hesitate to give us a holler. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And hopefully it's just this not so gentle nudge to get you to tackle this issue once and for all. Here's the rest of our interview with Russell Fishkind.
When people are making decisions before, or let's say as they're aging, I get a lot of calls on the show about like, Mom just threw the house in my name. And it seems like a lot of the work that you do, professional like you, can sometimes be undone by these people who are called elder care specialists and elder care. Sometimes they're attorneys, but I don't want to belittle the whole field, but some of these dudes are shysters, man. And they are doing stuff that is nutty, all because Mom says, well, then I want to be able to impoverish myself so I can get Medicaid for nursing home care. But there are all these decisions they're making that have actual big ramifications for the next generation.
So let's talk about those ramifications. Number one is under the guise of Medicaid or elder law planning, too often clients are transferring assets out of their names into, by way of example, one daughter's name and not the other two. The problem with that is you've effectively transferred title. Now it's a testamentary substitute. When Mom dies, it's going to pass to that daughter whose name is on the account. Now, the other two daughters might say, wait a minute, Mom didn't have what's called donative intent. She didn't mean for you to get it, Jill. What she was trying to do was create convenience, and therefore this transfer to you should be voided by the courts. So I'm seeing intrafamily litigation as a result of this Medicaid spend down process where accounts are being retitled, theoretically to avoid a Medicaid claim or to make a parent available to get Medicaid so they can go into a nursing home, but it's causing a whole new problem, which is how the asset passed. Now, maybe utilization of a trust, which distributes assets equally, would work. But the second problem that a lot of clients are not paying attention to is the step-up in basis.
Mm-hmm.
If Mom and Dad bought their house in 1968 for $22,000, and now this house in pick your town, Plainsfield, New Jersey, is now worth $600,000, and you transfer it into this Medicaid trust, you just lost your basis adjustment.
Right.
Meaning at death, the basis would be stepped up from what they paid plus improvements, just call it $50,000. It would have gotten stepped up to the $600,000, and there would have been no capital gains.
But once they throw it in my name, overnight, I just inherit it as if I bought that house at $22,000.
Correct.
So before we finish up, you have, I imagine, you deal with really, really rich people, but you deal with regular people too. What do you think at the end of the day is the feeling that most people have once they're signing all their documents? You think they feel relief?
Absolutely. I was going to say relief.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. They feel like they can check the box. And I always say to them, it's wonderful, but just note, this is not a one-off transaction. every couple of years, even if you just call me and I open up the file and we chat for 15 minutes, just to do a checkup, just like you would physically go to a doctor and get a checkup. So view it as a process, not a one-time check the box.
Although it feels good to check the box, at least for this year.
It certainly does, and I understand.
All right, my bookend question. You ready?
Yes.
What's the worst money decision or career decision that you've ever made?
Unfortunately, fairly recently, I was nervous about the economy. I decided that I'll just sit in cash and wait it out. Meanwhile, the market's gone up 20%, right? So I just exposed myself, but I was concerned, and now I missed out on this big run. But what are you going to do?
Wait, are you back in or not?
Not yet.
Oh, my God. Mark, let's get him a little dollar cost averaging strategy.
Okay, that's it. That is our interview that is completed with Russell Fishkind. We really want to thank him for joining us. And again, this was all done before the pandemic. So this interview has much more resonance now than it did even when I conducted it. But I cannot urge you enough to please, please, please try to focus on this. If you need a more significant nudge, then send us an email. It's askjill@jillonmoney.com. Askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We are broadcasting from the Policy Genius virtual studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. All you have to do is go to policygenius.com. Oh, and by the way, since we were just talking about estate planning with our wonderful guest, you know, Policy Genius is one of the companies that is doing online estate planning. Keep it in mind. I know it's not the most fun topic, but boy, it feels so good when you get it done. This is from Susan, who says that her granddaughter is 19, works full-time. She attends college. Now, the granddaughter has applied for credit cards, but with no luck. The reason that they give was not at the job long enough, and boom, no credit. Okay, so I presume you want to know what to do. The easiest thing for her to do to start establishing credit is to go and look for a secured credit card. And you know what? Do a little Google search. Say best secured credit card, and I'm sure that you'll have a lot of different options. Here's what a secured credit card it does. It allows her to basically send the bank or the financial institution $500. Put it down on the card, and then essentially work your way back from there. And in a weird way, these secured credit cards, which are almost like prepaid cards, they're not, but they kind of act like that. The benefit is that secured credit cards are reporting the payment information to the credit reporting agencies. And therefore, your granddaughter will start to establish her own credit record. So I always say secured credit cards, they're great for people who are just starting out. They're also really great for people who have stumbled and trying to rebuild their credit. So check it out. Secured credit cards, that's what you're looking for. You're a good grandmother. Don't have her go on your credit card. She can do this herself. She'll be very happy to have done it. So that's it. That's the program. Hey, if any of this has really made you think I have a financial question, I've got great news for you. We have an email address that Mark checks all the time. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. You can always go onto the website, jillonmoney.com. We've got our contact button there. And if you want more of us, subscribe to the Jill on Money podcast. You can get it at Apple or Spotify or radio.com, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find all the links to it on our website. Don't forget, wash your hands, wear your masks, maintain your physical distancing, and don't forget to do something nice for someone else today. We'll talk to you next week.